Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Heather, and today I am here to talk through all of the books that I read in January. I cannot believe that we are already a month into the new year. What is time? I had a fairly good reading month this month. It has certainly ramped up in this past week or so, but I will leave those updates for the end. I have to say that I started my reading year off beautifully, which is always a superstition I have, but I was so pleased with what I read. I started my new year by rereading Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke, by listening to the new 20th anniversary audiobook as narrated by Richard Armitage, which was delightful. I am discovering so much more in the second read of it. I love a lot of the commentary. I am discovering very different feelings about some characters. It's really incredible, and I love that it's proving itself worthy of a reread, and thus worthy of being one of my favorite books. I might have finished it this month. I have about that much left. I've been moving the bookmark in my physical book. However, as predicted, some library holds have come in, which has paused my progress on this book. So I will tell you more about it in February when I hope to actually finish it. In terms of physical books, I started the year with two reads that I thought would be really delightful and kind of set the tone for the year. The first being We'll Meet Again by Anton Dubek. This is book 4 in his Buckingham series about the Buckingham Hotel. We are now in the early 40s, and I can tell you nothing about what is happening to the characters, but we see more changes and how they all cope with those changes as Britain enters World War II. As usual, they are wonderful, and I cannot wait to move on to the next book this coming month. I also read The Girl with the Lost Smile by Miranda Hart, which is a middle grade book that I had not realized that she wrote. And I found this at a library book sale back in the fall. This was delightful. This was really cute and a lot darker and deeper at times than I expected it to be. And we follow our main character Chloe as things are changing at home, and she's not sure what to do about it, and she feels like she needs to keep being her usual happy, jokey self. But that's not working. That's becoming harder and harder to do, and she worries that maybe that's the reason why these terrible things are happening, and she puts a lot of pressure on herself. And her imaginary world comes to life and helps her find coping strategies and helps her deal with what's going on. I loved that the ending wasn't resolving all of those problems, but it was resolving her relationship with them. I thought that was very realistic. The illustrations are very sweet, and although a bit hokey in places, I feel like it's a book that a lot of middle grade students should read, especially those going through things in their own lives. I feel like this could be really helpful to them. I also read Stephen Fry's retelling of the Trojan War, which is book 3 in his Greek myth series. I love Stephen Fry. I loved mythos. I loved heroes. I didn't love this one as much. I think it was a good retelling. He certainly did a lot of research. I loved the back sections, which tells us approximately how much might be myth and how much might be history and where do we draw the line. I think I just didn't enjoy it as much because I don't care about the Trojan War. It has never really interested me. I hoped that this might change my mind. It really didn't. I think it's just a lot of people having way too much pride and being stupid and killing each other over it, which I realize hubris is an inherent ingredient in tragedy, but just no patience for it. Recently, I also read Clanlands in New Zealand by Sam Heughan and Graham McTavish, based on the television series of the same name. Clanlands, the original, had them traveling through Scotland and looking at various cultural things. This was supposed to have been the same thing, but in New Zealand, because Graham McTavish now lives in New Zealand. I have to be honest, I didn't love it. Their endless ribbing of each other really wore on me after a while. I don't care about their many trips to adventure parks and kayaks. That's just not something that I personally would want to do. I liked that Graham included a lot of history in certain sections, especially about the colonization of New Zealand and the various interactions between the white settlers and the Maori people and how those relationships developed over time. That, I think, would have been very interesting if it had been told in any sort of linear fashion. They were kind of dotted throughout the book, and it was hard to get a real grasp on when all of this was happening, which encounter led to another, which might have informed the way these groups interacted with each other. So it wasn't as helpful in that way as I hoped it would be, not knowing much about New Zealand's history. So overall, I had hoped for great things, but not my favorite in terms of how it was delivered. Maybe had I watched the series, it would have been funnier, but it's just okay. I also read 2 ebooks during January. The first was Honey and Spice by Bolu Babaloa. I was on the train to the city this particular day, so I was able to get this from my library and read it on the train. It was really delightful. This is a contemporary romance set at a fictional university, I think in the UK, and that was my one slight quibble with this book. It centers around a lot of Black characters on campus and has a fake dating premise, slight enemies to lovers. It was really delightfully done, and all of the characters were drawn incredibly vividly, except for how they were supposed to sound. There would be so many mentions of so many different places in relation to all of these characters. Who was Nigerian? Well, were they from Nigeria, or were they from a Nigerian family but had grown up in the UK? Who was mentioning New York and Michigan, and who was from Nigeria but had been sent to posh school in the UK. And with all of those factors rolling around, it was really hard for me to imagine exactly what they should sound like. What sort of accent should I be imagining this person having? I got over that hump. I think I figured it out. And I loved the characters anyway. The plot was really well resolved. It was very sweet. I liked it very, very much. And I'm really excited that my library has the audiobook of book 2. So I'm hoping I will finally find out how right or how wrong I was in imagining how these characters sound. I also finally read through my arc of Rules of the Heart by Janice Hadlow. I loved The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. You'll see it right here. I thought it was wonderfully done. I quite liked her nonfiction book about George III and his family. I didn't love this book as much. It follows Lady Bessborough, who was a real person in history. She was the sister of Georgiana, the Duchess of Devonshire, and it follows her marriage and her subsequent torrid, long-lasting, and yet disastrous affair with Lord Granville? Gresham? It's definitely a G. She calls him G after a while. Because I can't remember, because quite honestly, I did not like him. I do not care enough to remember what his proper name was. And that was my problem with this whole book, is that it's told in retrospect. After everything has ended, she is looking back on the relationship through various letters that she still has and filling in the gaps based on what she remembers. And so as she's narrating this story, she will point out things like, yes, this should have been a red flag, but I was so in love, I didn't care anyway. And I realized I have come to a point in my life where I have no patience for that. So that made the 400 pages of this love affair rather difficult to get through or feel any kind of sympathy for, at least. I did like that it tried to highlight the poor treatment of women in the 18th century, the entitlement of men. It's certainly having a lot of parallels to today as well. So I appreciated that that's another thing that she was trying to draw out of this story. I appreciate that she fell in love with Lady Vespera as she was researching her and trying to understand her, but it just wasn't for me. It was beautifully done, well written, just not the story for me. Then I came to rather a crossroads in my reading. I was getting close to the end of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I read the first part of the first chapter of Desperate Remedies by Thomas Hardy and really liked it, was really getting intrigued by it. And then, as predicted, library holds came in for me, so those books have been set to the side in favor of library books with due dates. So at the moment, I am hoping to finish The Paris Express by Emma Donoghue this weekend. This is about an apparently famous, though I've never heard of it, train crash in France in the late 1800s. I want to say the 1890s. And you're following a variety of different characters who are all passengers on that train. Following why they're getting on the train, how are they feeling about it, where are they hoping to go, and why are they going there, and then watching the fallout. Then I am also listening to Vagabond, being Tim Curry's memoir, which is delightful. I am loving him as a writer. You can tell how much he savors the English language. It is slightly sad hearing him read it himself and hearing what his stroke has done to his voice. You can hear that reading this book himself is much more of a struggle than it would have been, but it's still delightful to hear him do it and to hear him soldier on and do as much as he can. But again, I'm only 2/3 of the way through, so I will give you my full opinions on both of those reads in my February wrap-up. So those are the books that I have read or have on the go at the moment. Let me know down below, how was your first month of reading so far? Are you looking for recommendations? Do you have recommendations for me? Any and all things. I am always curious to hear about your reading loves, reading habits. And until next time, be safe, be well, and happy reading. Bye everyone.